Hello, my dear learners. Welcome back to online learning platform of Shri Basava Public School. I hope you all are fine at home and doing well with your all activities. Children, have we thought of people who are differently abled and why are they called differently abled or disabled? If they are not normal like all of us, they have abilities which are higher than us. They have mental abilities, physical abilities which are stronger than us. In today's session, where we are going to start a new chapter, a visit to Cambridge, where we are going to study little more about the legendary scientist Stephen Hawking. It's my pleasure to introduce the author of this chapter, Firdaus Kanga, because he is also another brave heart. So children, let's start this session with brief information about the author, Firdaus Kanga. Yes, he was born in 1960 in Bombay. He is a writer and actor who lives in London. He has written a novel which is called Trying to Grow, and it is a semi-autobiographical set in India, and he has written a travel book which is called Heaven on Wheels. Yes, Heaven on Wheels, about his experiences in the United Kingdom. His novel Trying to Grow was made into a fiction film named Sixth Happiness, for which Kanga wrote a screenplay and also starred. He was born in Parsi family with the condition known as brittle bones disease. This left him with several painful fractures throughout his childhood and adolescence in India. But he adjusted to his disability early in his life and tough mentally. So, children, this chapter, A Visit to Cambridge, is a meeting of two extraordinary people, that scientist Stephen Hawking, who was paralyzed, but he did not left this disease to stop his growth and success. He could not speak, but all he could was punch on words of his computer which would speak on behalf of him. And then this interview was conducted by author writer Firdaus Kanga, who himself a differently abled or a disabled man. These two brave men exchanged their thoughts of how the life is on a wheelchair, and they also talked about the people or a normal people who how they react by seeing them. Firdaus Kanga was on walking tour. He was on walking tour in Cambridge. That was the time when his guide reminded him that Hawking lived there. He has a great urge of meeting this legendary scientist Stephen Hawking, who had taken over Isaac Newton's chair in the university. He was an astrophysicist and the author of a book, A Brief History of Time. And of course, children, Firdaus Kanga would not have gone there without meeting this excellent scientist, Stephen Hawking. So now, before starting reading and explanation, let's see a video of Stephen Hawking achievement.
We end here tonight with one of the wonders of the universe. His name was Stephen Hawking. Hawking died today at his home in Cambridge, England. He was 76. Here's Mark Phillips.
Understanding how paradoxes between quantum mechanics.
The body had been ravaged by disease, but the mind soared into the cosmos. Stephen Hawking had even trained, hoping to get into space.
I could have gone on and on. Space, here I come.
His life would have been an inspiration even if he hadn't defied medical science and lived 50 years longer than a person afflicted with ALS, the muscle-wasting Lou Gehrig's disease, is supposed to. And even if he hadn't, as he once told 60 Minutes, gone scientifically where no man had gone before.
For me, it is quite an achievement. I never thought I would get so far.
His physical limitations had, he said, freed his mind to develop brilliant new theories on the origins of the universe, or on what actually happened in space's black holes. And his ability to explain those theories using his computer's synthesized voice
Makes us unique as transcending our limits.
And in his unlikely bestseller, A Brief History of Time, made him probably the most famous scientist of his generation. It earned him one of President Obama's first medals of freedom.
Professor Stephen Hawking was a brilliant man and a mediocre student.
Hawking's life story, depicted in the 2014 movie The Theory of Everything, might have been dismissed as a Hollywood fantasy if it wasn't true.
I reversed the process all the way back to see what happened at the beginning of time itself.
But he didn't need actors to play him. He was quite willing to play himself. On Star Trek,
I call.
Wrong again, Albert.
World's smartest
and
man.
on The Simpsons.
I wanted to see your utopia, but now I see it as more of a fruitopia.
But it's the science that endures, that and his message.
So remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet.
Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
Children, let's start the reading and explanation of the chapter, A Visit to Cambridge, the interview in between Firdaus Kanga and Stephen Hawking, a great legendary scientist. Cambridge was my metaphor for England, and it was strange that when I left it had become altogether something else because I had met Stephen Hawking there. It was on a walking tour through Cambridge that the guide mentioned Stephen Hawking, poor man who is quite disabled now, though he is a worthy successor to Isaac Newton, whose chair he has at the university. And I started because I had quite forgotten that this most brilliant and completely paralyzed astrophysicist, the author of A Brief History of Time, one of the biggest bestsellers ever lived here. Yes, children, the story, the chapter, the introduction or interview starts here when Firdaus Kanga went to the tour or a visit on a walking tour of a Cambridge. He had never thought he will meet Stephen Hawking at that time. Yes, so that's why he is explaining here. Cambridge was his metaphor for England. It was a thing regarded as a representative. He was on a walking tour, and when he left from there, it was something else happened with him. Yes, he was on a walking tour through the Cambridge, and that time his guide who was with him, he mentioned that poor Stephen Hawking lived there, and he has a chair of Isaac Newton in his university. So he for that moment he had forgotten that the most brilliant scientist, legendary scientist who was completely paralyzed lives there, and who was paralyzed, and he was the author who has written the book A Brief History of a Time, the biggest, and also he was considered as the biggest seller, the biggest bestseller ever lived there. So he had forgotten that things from his mind, but he remembers, and now he started urging to meet the Stephen Hawking. The author of A Brief History of Time, one of the biggest bestseller ever lived there. Yes, the author of Brief History of Time. It is a book which was written by legendary scientist Stephen Hawking, and the book was considered as a bestseller ever lived here. When the walking tour was done, I rushed to a phone booth and almost tearing the cord. Children, underline this word code. It means line. It means line. So it could reach me outside, phoned Stephen Hawking's house. There was his assistant on the line, and I told him I had to come in a wheelchair from India. Perhaps he thought I had propelled myself all the way. Propelled, it means drive. Propelled, it means drive. To write about my travels in Britain. I had to see Professor Hawking. Even 10 minutes would do. Half an hour, he said, from 3:30 to 4. Yes, children. Soon after knowing about the presence of Stephen Hawking at that time, in that place, soon after completion his walking tour of a Cambridge, he rushed to phone booth and he broke the line and he called to the house of Stephen Hawking, where the call was received by his assistant. He said, I am Firdaus Kanga, and I am a writer, author, and I wanted to meet Stephen Hawking at least for 10 minutes or half an hour. And also he said, I travelled here on my wheelchair from India. So then at least I want to meet 10 minutes or half an hour with Stephen Hawking. Then assistant replied, yes, half an hour. From 3:30 to 4 o'clock. He got a time of 30 minutes to interact with Stephen Hawking. So children, After that, and suddenly I felt weak all over. Growing up disabled, you get fed up with people asking you to be brave, as if you have a courage account on which you are too lazy to draw a check. The only thing that makes you stronger is seeing somebody like you achieving something huge. Then you know how much is possible and you reach out further than you ever thought you could. Yes, children, when he got a time of meeting or interacting with the legendary scientist, he felt weak. He felt very weak, and he was also expressing his problem that growing able, differently abled child, it is not a easy it is not an easy job, because we will be fed up by listening or asking questions by the people to, or getting the suggestions from them to be brave, as if they were thinking we have lot of courage but we are not doing it. And he had given a phrase to explain that, as if we are having a great courage account of courage, but we are too lazy to draw a check. And also it is only a thing that makes you strong, especially the disabled people. When you meet this kind of huge achievers, great achievers who inspires you a lot with their experience, with their achievements in life, and then you will get to know about that, how much it is possible to do and how you can reach further in your life. He was very happy and excited to meet Stephen Hawking. "I haven't been brave," said his disembodied computer voice the next afternoon. I had no choice. Surely I wanted to say living creatively with the reality of his disintegrating body was a choice. Children, underline this disintegrating word, which means breakup body. Afternoon, he met the great scientist, and he asked question to him that he asked question, and the answer was given by whom? It was given by the computer voice. Yes, he can't speak, children, as you saw in the video. So his disembodied computer voice replied that, "I am not brave. I haven't been brave, but I had no choice." And surely, and also he said, surely living creatively with this breakup body was a choice. Is it a choice for you? Then after that, but I kept quiet because I felt guilty every time I spoke to him, forcing him to respond. There he was, tapping at the little switch in his hand, trying to find the words on his computer with the only bit of a movement left him. His long pale fingers, every so often his eyes would shut in frustrated exhaustion, and sitting opposite him I could feel his anguish. Underline this word anguish, children. It means pain. It means pain. The mind beyond with thoughts that came out in the frozen phrases and sentences stiff as corpses. Underline this word corpses. It means body. Stiff body. It means stiff body. Children, when he was asking question, this was also again a question from him, from the Firdaus Kanga, that living creatively is a reality of his breakup body was a choice. When he asked, he was also feeling guilty whenever he was asking questions to Stephen Hawking, because he was feeling guilty because every time when he asked question, Stephen Hawking was switching, tapping with his little fingers on the machine which he was holding in hand. And also he can feel by sitting opposite to him that he was frustrated and quite tired by the questions of people. He understand, and he was answering the questions very stiffly. A lot of people seem to think that disabled people are chronically unhappy. I said, I know that's not true. Myself, are you often laughing inside? Again he asked a question. Many people think that disabled people are chronically unhappy. He said to the Stephen Hawking, and I know that that's not true myself. I can say that it is not true. And he also asked him that, are you laughing inside? To Stephen Hawking. About 3 minutes later, he responded, I find it amusing when people patronize me. Children, underline the word patronize. It means feel pity for me or put down me. Feel pity or put down me. And do you find it annoying when someone like me comes and disturbs you in your work? The answer flashed yes. Then he smiled his one way smile, and I knew without being sentimental or silly that I was looking at one of the most beautiful men in the world. Children, he also, when he was asking question, he replied for the question. People think that we are unhappy. For that he replies, I am amazed, I am shocked by peace, looking by behavior of the people towards me, because they feel pity down. They feel very pity by seeing me. And also he asked one more question to him, that do you feel irritated, do you feel annoyed when someone like me comes and disturbs you in your work? Then he replies yes, and also he started to give a smile, beautiful smile. If you see in video you can understand, beautiful smile, one way smile of Stephen Hawking. Without being judgmental, without being sentimental, he did not concentrate on the answer. He was enjoying the beautiful smile, most beautiful smile of men in the world. This is the first part explanation, children. I hope you understand. Thank you so much for watching this video.